We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Maldives President Mohammad Muizzi to arrive in Delhi on his first bilateral visit to India. Talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday. Israel pounds fresh bombs in Beirut and Gaza. Demonstrations in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv for release of hostages. French President Macron calls for ceasefire, halt to arms supply. Netanyahu terms it shameful, says will win war without their support. Devastating floods in northeast India's Garo hills, one of the worst in years, claims several lives. And on to the top story now. Israel vowed to keep fighting Hezbollah until victory. Its forces are trying all efforts to making the Lebanon-based outfit unable to function. The Israeli Defense Forces are identifying Hezbollah's hideouts inside tunnels in Lebanon and sealing the tunnels that look like proper habitat and storage area. Releasing a video of its anti-Hezbollah operations, the Israel Defense Force on Saturday claimed they destroyed 250 meters of terror infrastructure and captured equipments used in attacks on Israel from Lebanon's side. With the first anniversary of the October 7th Hamas attack approaching, Israeli forces continue ground operations inside Lebanon against Hezbollah. And huge explosions rocked the Lebanese capital Beirut's southern suburbs overnight, shaking the ground and sending plumes of smoke into the skyline. Residents in Beirut said the bombardment was so intense that car alarms went off and buildings shook as Israeli fighter jets pounded the densely populated outskirts, including the international airport's perimeter. The attack comes in retaliation for Iran's attack. Video footage shows a fireball rising above Lebanon's capital overnight following another strike on the city, with reports suggesting it may have hit a petrol station. The Israeli army said it was currently striking terror targets belonging to the Hezbollah terrorist organization in the area of Beirut in a statement on its Telegram channel. And after major bombings by Israel in Beirut overnight, plumes of smoke could be seen above infrastructure as the day broke on Sunday. The rays of the sun hit the top of the Lebanese capital to reveal the damage done overnight in its southern suburbs. Strikes also hit close to the airport, according to witnesses, after the Israeli military warned some residents to flee. Massive consecutive strikes at Beirut's southern suburbs late on Saturday into early Sunday, sending booms across the city and sparking flashes of red and white for nearly 30 minutes, visible from several kilometers away. Also, a red alert has been issued in Israel and the Iron Dome was activated to thwart missile attacks over its cities. Several explosions were also heard over northern Israel early on Sunday. Several flashes reflected on the buildings below as interceptors were deployed. Israel has begun an intense retaliatory bombing campaign in Lebanon and sent troops across the border in recent weeks after nearly a year of exchanging fire with Hezbollah. Fighting had previously been mostly limited to the Israel-Lebanon border area, taking place in parallel to Israel's year-old conflict in Gaza against Hamas. Israel says it aims to allow the safe return of tens of thousands of citizens to their homes in northern Israel, bombarded by Hezbollah since October 8 last year. Also, the Israeli attacks have eliminated much of Hezbollah's senior military leadership, including Secretary General Nasrallah, in an air attack on September 27th. Meanwhile, the Israeli military on Saturday announced changes to its defensive guidelines in several areas, including in some communities north of Tel Aviv, near the Gaza Strip and parts of the occupied West Bank. The changes allow gatherings of up to 2,000 people, up from 1,000. The IDF spokesperson also said that Israel will retaliate against Iran for the missile attack launched by Tehran when the time is right.
According to the situation assessment that was held today, it has been decided to update instruction of the home front so that gatherings are allowed of up to 2,000 people from the Carmel area to the south will all be affected. The way in which we respond to this disgraceful attack will be in the manner, at the location, and the timing which we decide according to the political leadership's instructions.
Well, along with easing of some of the defense guidelines, Israel remains on alert. The country has deployed its forces on alert ahead of the anniversary of Hamas' October 7th attack. The alert came with Israel engaged in an intensifying war with the Hezbollah, which Army Chief Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi said would be hit without concession or respite. Ahead of Monday's grim anniversary, military spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said at a televised briefing that Israeli forces are prepared with increased forces in anticipation for this day when there could be attacks on the home front. Well, a day before anniversary of the October 7 terror attack on Israel by Hamas, French President Emmanuel Macron has called for a ceasefire as whereabouts of many hostages are still not known and they are in Hamas captivity. Macron was addressing International Organization of the Francophonie. He said that while France supports Israel's security and have special thought for victims and hostages to take the ceasefire effective, there must be halt to arms sales to those who are using them in Gaza.
When we call for ceasefire, this is the case for Gaza. This was also the case for Lebanon last week. Well, we try not to call for a ceasefire while continuing to deliver weapons of war. And I think it's just consistency. And so I confirm to you that for my part, I think that at the moment, the ceasefire in Gaza is a priority to allow humanitarian action to be resumed at full capacity and also to allow for a political solution which alone will ensure peace and security for all, with the two-state solution at play. And as for Lebanon, we also call for a ceasefire.
Well, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reacted sharply to Macron's demand for halt to arms supplies, saying that the French president's statement ignores the enormity of terror strikes that had taken place in Israel last year.
As Israel fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran, all civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Yet President Macron and some other Western leaders are now calling for an arms embargo against Israel. Shame on them. Is Iran imposing an arms embargo on Hezbollah, on the Houthis, on Hamas, and on its other proxies? Of course not. The axis of terror stands together. But countries who supposedly oppose this terror axis call for an arms embargo on Israel. What a disgrace. Well, let me tell you this. Israel will win with or without their support.
Well, after Israeli PM Netanyahu dubbed France President Macron's arms embargo call, the French president's office has stressed that France is Israel's steadfast friend, as per the Times of Israel on Sunday. According to the Times of Israel, the LSE stressed that Macron supports Israel's security and demonstrates it. Macron's office stated that France mobilized its military this week during Iran's missile attack, as it did in April. And French President Emmanuel Macron has announced that France will organize an international conference this month. The international conference is aimed at raising humanitarian aid for Lebanon and strengthen security in the southern part of the country. Speaking after a meeting of French-speaking countries in Paris, French President Emmanuel Macron emphasized his support for the international community and support the Lebanese armed forces boost security. Well, thousands of Israelis took to the streets once again on Saturday night, calling for a deal to secure the release of those held captive by Hamas in Gaza. However, in much smaller numbers this week to follow Home Front Command instructions limiting gatherings in light of changing wartime conditions. At least 2,000 protesters gathered in front of Begin Gate at the Kiryat military base in Tel Aviv, preceded by a weekly press conference by some hostages' family members. Well, people in Jerusalem as well gathered to demand hostages' release. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has fiercely maintained that he is committed to releasing the hostages, blaming Hamas for rejecting repeated proposals. Well, on the other hand, in a latest from Lebanon, the U.S. State Department has reportedly organized about 145 passengers on 2 flights out of Lebanon, where Israel has been pounding Hezbollah targets in retaliation of Iran's attack in recent days. Each of the flights from Beirut to Istanbul, Turkey, could carry 300 passengers for a total capacity of 600, as per a U.S. State Department spokesperson. The State Department has advised Americans since late September to depart Lebanon, while commercial options still remain available, and warned those who stay to be prepared to shelter in place should the situation deteriorate further. Also, the U.S. Secretary General denounced Hamas and called for an immediate end to the shocking violence and bloodshed in Gaza and Lebanon in a statement on Saturday ahead of the anniversary of Hamas's October 7th attack. Monday marks 1 year since the devastating assault on Israel that sparked the ongoing crisis in Gaza, with Lebanon now also pulled into the fray and world leaders warning of a potential all-out regional crisis. While demanding the hostages' immediate and unconditional release, Guterres also implored Hamas to allow the hostages to be visited by Red Cross personnel. And at least 24 people were killed and dozens of others were injured in Israel's retaliatory airstrike on a Gaza mosque. Israel's attack comes as part of its operation against Hamas and the mission to neutralize all its centers in Gaza. Early on Sunday, a mosque near the Al-Aqsa hospital in Deir al-Balaha in the central Gaza Strip became one of the targets as the war between Israel and Hamas approaches its first anniversary. And just 1 month before the November 5th presidential election in the United States, Donald Trump returned to rural Pennsylvania on Saturday, where he narrowly survived an assassination attempt in July. Speaking to a large crowd in the key battleground state, the Republican presidential candidate reaffirmed that his movement to make America great again remains stronger and more united.
12 weeks ago this evening on this very ground, a cold-blooded assassin aimed to silence me and to silence the greatest movement, MAGA. For 16 harrowing seconds during the gunfire, time stopped as this vicious monster unleashed pure evil from his sniper's perch, not so far away. But by the hand of Providence and the grace of God, that villain did not succeed in his goal.
Well, in mid-speech, Trump invited billionaire Elon Musk on stage in Pennsylvania's Butler, stating that he is an incredible guy. Addressing the crowd with energy, Musk donned a black Make America Great Again cap and an Occupy Mars shirt.
I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark MAGA. Well, first of all, I want to say what an honor it is to be here. And, you know, the true test of someone's character is how they behave under fire. And we had one president who couldn't climb a flight of stairs, and another who was fist pumping after getting shot. Fight, fight, fight!
Also, Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance joined Donald Trump in his campaign in Pennsylvania on Saturday, justifying Trump's position on rights of women. He said that every state should take its own call in making law on abortion instead of framing a federal legislation.
On the abortion question, the president's been very clear that he wants Georgia to make Georgia's laws, California to make California's laws, and to respect the fact that we kind of have a messy democracy where sometimes different states are going to make different determinations on these issues.
Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris assessed the damage from Hurricane Helene in Charlotte, North Carolina on Saturday. Harris attended a meeting with emergency management officials and talked to members of the armed forces. She also visited a donation center where she helped fill bags with toiletries and spoke to local residents. Her visit comes a day after her Republican rival Donald Trump campaigned in Fayetteville, home to a large military community in North Carolina.
The work that is happening here and that continues really is the best of what we can do to bring federal, state, and local resources together in a way that is coordinated with one purpose and one purpose only, which is bringing relief, support, and help to the people who are most in need and desperate for help and desperate to be seen and heard. So I came here to find out what's going on the ground, to find out what more we can do in terms of federal aid, what we're giving to Mecklenburg County in terms of disaster relief, the work that we are doing, which is $100 million to assist with the rebuilding of Interstate 40.
Well, as Hurricane Helene leaves a trail of destruction, Florida's governor declared a state of emergency on Saturday as forecasters warned that the U.S. state could be slammed by another major storm next week. The National Weather Department said the tropical storm Milton, currently churning in the western Gulf of Mexico, was forecast to strengthen into a major hurricane as it moves towards Florida into midweek next week. Depending on its path, Milton could potentially bring fresh havoc to areas of Florida's west coast still recovering from Helene. And as record migration levels surge across the United States, teachers are confronting unprecedented challenges in their classrooms, particularly language barriers. Schools in broader states and urban centers are experiencing an influx of students who speak little or no English. To address these challenges, some districts across the region are implementing professional development programs focused on trauma-informed teaching practices and cultural competency. Schools are also partnering with mental health professionals to offer counseling services and support groups tailored to the needs of immigrant students and their families. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. We'll give you all the updates from Russia-Ukraine conflict as Russia captures another village in eastern Ukraine. India to host maritime exercise Malabar 2024. And we'll show you Indian Air Force's Grand Air Show at Chennai's Marina Beach today.
This is a golden era of the Indian chess with both the men's and women's team winning gold at the Olympiad. What do you think is driving this incredible success for Indian chess on the global stage right now?
Some level it was always bound to happen, and India has come very close in some Olympiads, and then they unfortunately couldn't get the gold medal, but this year I think was the golden year and we managed to get it.
How you maintain your focus, your composure during the tournament?
Just try to focus on one thing at a time, helps me get into the groove, get into the mode. Focusing on the current moment really helps.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and moving on, Haitian Prime Minister Gary Conille on Saturday embarked on a trip to the United Arab Emirates and Kenya to seek security assistance following one of the deadliest gang attacks in the Caribbean nation. Haiti is reeling after members of the Grand Griffe gang stormed through the town of Pont Sonde in the western Artibonite region early on October 3rd that caused the death of at least 70 people, forcing over 6,000 residents to flee. Last week, the UN Security Council authorized for another year an international security force that is intended to help local police fight gangs and provide law and order. Prime Minister of Haiti said that the aim of his visit to Kenya is to go to hold talks with President Ruto to speed up the deployment of Kenyan troops to support the national police force.
One of the aims of this trip is to go to Kenya to talk to President William Ruto about speeding up the deployment of Kenyan troops as quickly as possible to continue supporting the National Police Force.
And a Royal New Zealand Navy vessel ran aground and sank off Samoa on Sunday morning. New Zealand Defence Minister Judith Collins confirmed safety of all 75 crew and passengers. The hydrographic vessel was conducting a reef survey near the southern coast of Upolu. The Idaho wildfire continued looming over a residential area of Boise County on Sunday with thick plumes of smoke all around. Firefighting plane released water to combat the situation. The fire broke out early on Friday morning along Highway 21 in East Boise and has already burned thousands of acres in the Boise foothills. In New Mexico, the 52nd Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta kicked off on Saturday with balloons of staggering sizes dotting the skies as mass ascension. The massive balloons were inflated to full size, seemingly obscuring the horizon as they rose from the ground and into the air. And our updates on Russia-Ukraine conflict. Ukrainian forces said they have shot down a Russian fighter plane on Saturday, while Russia claimed it has made some gains in Ukraine's east. The Russian bomber was shot down near the city of Kostyantynivka in the Donetsk region, said Ukrainian force. According to the local authorities, there were no reported casualties, while teams were on the ground. A strike hit a nearby residential area, resulting in several other houses being damaged. On the other hand, Russia's defense ministry claimed that it had taken control of the village of Zelandruhe. Separately, the defense ministry said Russia had downed 10 Ukrainian drones overnight over its Belgorod, Voronezh and Kursk regions, which border Ukraine. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Saturday he would attend an international meeting to discuss military support for Ukraine to be held in Germany next week. The summit, scheduled for October 12th, will be the first to take place at the leadership level, bringing together more than 50 of Ukraine's allies, including U.S. President Joe Biden. The gathering is expected to address pressing issues surrounding military aid to Ukraine as it continues its defense against Russia's advancing forces. Zelensky on social media stated that he would present clear concrete steps towards a just end of the war, adding that Russia could be stopped by the determination of our partners and the strengthening of Ukraine. And India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has clearly denied reports of Chinese incursions in Arunachal Pradesh and reaffirmed India's robust patrolling of the line of actual control. The remarks by Dr. Jaishankar came while addressing an interactive session at the Conclave 2024 hosted by Primetime in New Delhi. On being asked about reports of China entering the Arunachal border in recent times, Jaishankar said in Arunachal Pradesh, we are very robust in our patrolling of the LAC.
In Arunachal Pradesh, we are very robust in our patrolling to the LAC. And I can tell you that, in terms of our patrolling in the LAC, there's been no major change last 5-10 years, maybe even longer.
Well, Maldives President Mohammad Muizzi on Sunday will arrive here for a state visit to India from October 6th to 10th. This will be Maldives President's first bilateral visit after assuming office. He's scheduled to hold high-level meetings with India's President Draupadi Murmu, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and other senior leaders. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar will call on the visiting Maldives President this evening. The discussions will focus on strengthening bilateral cooperation and further enhancing the long-standing relationship between the two nations. Earlier this year, the Maldives President had attended the swearing-in ceremony of Prime Minister Modi and the Council of Ministers at Rashtrapati Bhavan in June 9th. He has also met PM Modi on the sidelines of the COP28 summit in Dubai on the 1st December last year. And at least 15 people were dead after heavy rains triggered flash floods in northeast Indian state of Meghalaya's South Garo Hills district. Incessant rainfall for the last 2 days has triggered landslides, mudslides and swelled rivers that have washed away several wooden bridges and cut off road connectivity to many of the remote areas. Garo Hills is reeling under one of the worst floods it has faced in years. Floods and landslides have cut off the communication, delaying the arrival of SDRF and NDRF teams by several hours. SDRF and NDRF teams have been trying hard to recover the bodies. An Indian Air Force's Grand Air Show is taking place at Chennai's Marina Beach. The event is being held at Chennai's iconic Marina Beach, where more than 1 million people have gathered. The Indian Air Force enthralled the people of the city of Chennai on Sunday as part of a Grand Air Show involving 72 aircrafts. It is after a gap of 2 decades that an air show is returning to Chennai, and the Indian Air Force has a stellar lineup for mesmerizing those at the marina. Air show is part of Indian Air Force's 92nd year of celebrations. Following the open to public air show on Sunday, a restricted access IAF Day parade will be held on Tuesday. At Air Force Station, Tambaran on the outskirts of Chennai city, over the last 2 years, the Raising Day of India's tri-services have been held in different cities across the country. This is aimed at showcasing the valor, might and capabilities of the Indian Armed Forces, while also inspiring youngsters to take up a career in service of the nation. Notably, among the aviators that will be flying on Sunday are 2 Chennaiites.
The first buddy pair shall be taking the positions to safeguard the helicopter. Sentry silencing procedure.
12 படை வீரர்கள் இப்பொழுது இலக்கு பகுதியை நோக்கி செல்கிறார்கள்.
Well, now let's take a look at other stories making news today. 5 people lost their lives in a fire at Mumbai's Siddharth colony in Chembur. The blaze, confined to electric wiring and installations, broke out on the ground floor of the G+1 structure, which housed a shop below and a residence above. Firefighters quickly responded, but the damage was extensive. Delegation of influencers and content creators from the US invested in Europe visited Garo, Gujarat to celebrate the onset of Navaratri. They immersed themselves in local culture, practicing Garba and savoring traditional Gujarati thali during their stay. Maritime exercise Malabar 2024 is scheduled to take place from October 8 to 18th, beginning with the harbour phase in Visakhapatnam. The exercise is followed by the sea phase. This year's exercise is being hosted by India and will see the participation of Australia, Japan and the United States of America. And on to some sports stories now. In the ICC Women's T20 World Cup, India will take on arch rival Pakistan in the crucial match in Dubai on Sunday. India will not only hope to win, but also improve their net run rate, as the shocking defeat against New Zealand in the opening match has dented their chances of entering the semi-finals. The Harmanpreet Kaur-led squad now must win all its remaining group stage matches against Pakistan, Sri Lanka and Australia to have any realistic chance of making it to the last 4. In the second match of the day, West Indies will face Scotland. Both the teams have lost their opening matches. It is a do-or-die game for the West Indies, as another defeat can rule out their chances of qualifying for the semi-finals. Also, India and Bangladesh will square off in the men's first T20 international of the 3-match series in Gwalior on Sunday. India will hope to continue its winning streak following their 2-0 win in the recently concluded Test series. India stars who were part of the Test series have been rested. However, the men in blue have a star-studded lineup consisting of captain Suryakumar Yadav, Hardik Pandya, Sanju Samson and Arshdeep Singh and others.
Yes, sir. You got this one.
Well, more than 400 years ago, literary legend William Shakespeare said that music can raise out the written troubles of the brain. And people now are turning to music as a way to deal with the stresses of modern digital-driven life. Keeping the electrifying vibes of their weekend alive, Argentines swayed and danced as the Beatles' rock musician Paul McCartney dazzled the stage amid flashing blue lights and a zealous audience. Drums rolled and the energy could be seen all over the show venue. Paul McCartney mesmerized his fans as he performed hits like Can't Buy Me Love and Junior's Farm. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.